everybody, and welcome back to Berkeley Alumni's Pass the Mic, where we pass the mic to you. My name is Jaquel Illy.
I'm Patrick Pharma.
Hi, boss. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's April vacation here in Massachusetts, and I have 3 girls screaming outside my window, so everybody's fine. Everything's all right.
Honestly, you don't realize how many vacations students have until you're not in school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you do have a daughter, so maybe you do, but I just feel like me, I'm like, dang, another vacation. Shouldn't y'all be in school?
You know what? My daughter was like 5, 6 during the pandemic. So anything like that where kids have time off or anything, it's never going to be ever as bad as that. So
okay.
Every day is a gift for me.
You have a different perspective, a different appreciation.
I had 2 years where I didn't have a single solitary moment to myself, so
I got you.
I can last spring vacation.
Love that. Yes.
I just want to say we have one of those interviews where they're just spreading so much information, and I thought particularly that this would be good for new alumni, but also we have a whole new crop of graduating students that are going to be new to the alumni community. So I want to say welcome to you. Come join the party. But also, there's a great interview if you're thinking about moving, if you're thinking about starting your own business, starting your own career. There's book recommendations. I'm actually pretty excited for this interview.
Yes, today we have a great episode. The alums that we are interviewing are Paulo Stagnaro and also Claudia Medina. It was such a great time to have this conversation with them and to get their perspective.
Yeah, they were visiting campus for their SOMOS Latinx pre-orientation that our colleagues put together. I always love these interviews because it's always like really insightful because they're in the moment. The pressure is kind of on to pass their wisdom on to students. So it's really sharp. It's really insightful. It's really super interesting. I had a good time. You can hear me. I had a great time in that interview.
I think we have a great time with all of our interviews, boss. But just to piggyback off of that, yes, I agree. It's always cool to have alums come in and speak to students based off of their experiences, just to help ease whatever nervousness or concerns a student may have who are from different countries or have different backgrounds. So it was really cool to just be able to learn more, and we're excited for you to hear about it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Claudia Medina. I am originally from Peru. I am class of 2021. I went to Berkeley College of Music. I double major in jazz composition and performance, and I did a minor in music production and recording. I am currently living in Los Angeles. I'm a composer, producer. I'm a saxophone player. I do a lot of work for films, TV, libraries, and, just producing different artists and a bunch of music.
My name is Paulo Stagnaro. I was here at Berkeley till 2009, studied pro music, among some other things along the way. I'm a Boston native. I grew up nearby. My father, which some of you might know, is Oscar Stagnaro, who was kind of integral in, sort of creating this, I want to say it was really nascent when he first got here. So creating the awareness around, some of these programs that were built later. And I've been in New York for 13 years. Currently, I tour with Ricky Martin. I've been on the road with him for about 10 years. I worked a lot in the New York scene, which I love and hold very dear, which is something that's not a part of my day-to-day so much anymore, but something that I always enjoy sort of thinking about and kind of bringing to the forefront as far as my journey with music and all the steps that I took to get kind of to where I am. I also run an online educational platform for percussionists, which is something that I do now somewhat passively, but we built a really amazing community there of folks from all over, all ages. We have about 90 hours of content at this point, and are in a phase where we're getting to interview a lot of my colleagues and idols, which is something really cool. A lot of folks that didn't really get much coverage on the educational front, which is really cool. And I'm really happy to be here and kind of talk about my experience here at Berkeley, which was really cool and very different to what folks probably experience now. But I have to say the things that I took the most are definitely the people that I met, as far as students and teachers and the folks that I met along the way.
Where in Boston are you from?
I grew up in the South Shore in Braintree. If you all familiar with the Red Line, it's the
Right.
last stop
Of course
all the
we
way
are.
down. Yeah.
Right by Dave Dinger Ford.
Yeah, absolutely.
In
And all the
Braintree.
other, Tufanjian and everything else that's out there. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I had some friends in Braintree.
Okay, cool.
That's why I moved to the North Shore.
Okay. Yeah, you were like immediately no.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have talked about mentorship and like who has inspired you in your journey. Can you both just explain like your process of mentoring others and if there are any similarities or differences when it comes to how you were mentored and how you choose to mentor those now?
First off, I have to say that in that regard, I definitely have a leg up on the competition. My father's a natural born teacher, I don't consider myself to be a natural born teacher. It is very hard for me in some regards, especially when it comes to, I would say, imparting knowledge in a way that is easily digested and applicable, which I think is like the biggest caveat for most teachers. So in that regard, I always had the example, as you mentioned, you were able to get in contact with my father through your journeys in the States. And my dad is somebody that helped, a countless amount of people come to school, get scholarships. I mean, he really was like on the vanguard of that. And I'm talking about from the early 90s when he first got here through today, folks like Danilo Perez, who he, helped come to school and lived at my house for a time when he was transitioning here. Alumni Affairs, Antonio Sanchez, a million Berkeley alum that came through here. Pretty much anybody that, from I would say 50% of the folks that came from Latin American or Spanish-speaking countries in some way, shape, or form had contact with my father, with Oscar. And so that was something that, to me, again, at the time, is something that you kind of, you don't really realize the impact it has. But, being able to have a career in music like I have and seeing all the walks of life that people come from, all the things that they go through, packing up where they're from to start somewhere new, what he was able to do, and my mom as well, she was always super welcoming to all these folks, and many of them lived at home and many of them were, come and go. It made it very natural for me to just want to lend a hand whenever I got a chance. In part through the educational platform that I built, that's something kind of secondary. But the contact that I have one-on-one with the following generation, which in a way, at least for percussionists, is somewhat shrinking. So there's definitely less gigs than there used to be for musicians, performers in certain regard. And so I always try to make sure that they know that whether I met them today or whether I've known them since they were born or whether, however it is that we came across, that I'm always there to help in any regard, whether that's like I have a question about a song or I have this or how did you get the gig? I try to be an open book to any of the folks from the new generation, not just Latin students. I mean, I have, obviously friends and mentors and colleagues and also students from all over that have questions. And I feel like that's the thing that I realized was the most important that I saw and learned secondhand from my father. His door was always open. My mother as well, always open to help. And in part because they had it so tough. My folks came here in the late 70s, packed up from Peru, had nobody here, and were able somehow to forge careers in their own fields, which is to me still mind-boggling. Like, I don't know, I'd like to think that I do, but I'm not sure that I have the courage in that way to pack up and leave. Sure, I packed up and left Boston and moved to New York, but I mean, like, to leave my my home and family behind. I understand what, or at least can empathize with what that takes. So I am the first person to lend a hand when it comes to that. And, I would say that that comes also through music, obviously, because we're put in contact with so many folks. I get to travel the world a lot and meet people from all over. But I think that's something that, luckily I was able to sort of soak in secondhand. So my mentorship or my sort of apprenticeship led me to sort of the way that I like to mentor folks, which is just I'm there to kind of push you in whichever direction you want to go in. I don't really, there's no mold, there's no set way to make it in music as a performer. I feel like most folks find their path along the way. They focus more on certain things, and I think it's always something that the music game, especially more than any other sort of art form, more than dance, more than acting, is so word of mouth. There are no agencies for most of us in most regards. As a performer, it sort of develops in different ways depending on the field you concentrate in. But as a performer, there is no such thing as an agency of people calling you to get on the road or to do sessions. It's all word of mouth. So that word of mouth recommendation, when it comes from somebody who's in the industry and comes from somebody that has a little bit of weight, can really go a long way in changing somebody's path with music. So in my experience, as long as I deem you someone who's serious enough in your craft and someone who has their heart in the right place, I have no problem recommending folks when the right time comes for any sort of work. I'm not the kind of guy that holds on to the gig and doesn't. No. I'm the opposite way. I'm trying to break all the gates down so that you can flood in when it's your time and if you feel that that's what you want to do. So yeah, I don't know if that sort of answers the question, but it's that way for me.
Breaking gates down, not keeping them up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was deep.
Mentorship is so important. Honestly, it's so important. And sometimes we just think that mentorship can happen only when you're a student, and honestly, it can happen at any time. And it's so important and crucial to have people along the way when you are, after college or after, school or anything, because I consider myself someone that I want to keep learning always. Like, I never finish being a student. I'm always learning from somebody. And I was really fortunate to have really good mentors along the way. One of them, Maestro Stagnaro, like Paulo was saying, like, you don't necessarily have to have someone in a class as a teacher to be a mentor or, to be someone that will teach you something. Sometimes they just do things and you are sharing a stage with them or just like sharing something and they become your mentors because of like the great things that they do that teach you something. And I think in my case, when I was telling my story about Cynthia Mullis, right, this saxophone player, it became a little bit of like this unspoken thing in my mind of like, I have to do something because I was so fortunate to have, to come here to Berkeley. And for some reason, this happened to me. And like Paulo was telling, like, yes, talent can be there and all of that, but like work, you put in your work there is more important. Like you really, like everyone, there can be many people that can have talent, but they really have to work for it. Like, at least for me, that was my experience. And I think, like, if it happened to me, and why not any other girl in Peru? And I think it's the reason is, it can be many things. I don't know the answer, but I think, like, in my mind, I was like, I'm blessed for that, and I want to give back to the community. So in 2018, I founded my educational program called From Peru to the World. And the way it started, it was like creating a series of videos, collaborations with musicians from all over the world, because I was like fascinated by all the cultures of the people I met here at Berkeley that were from different countries, that were teaching me their own, rhythms, music, etc. And so I started doing these videos of like, okay, what I can share with them is my Peruvian music. So I started creating and producing the music, getting together with all musicians. I did like a series of videos with like musicians from Arabic countries, and that second one was like with the national anthem of Peru, with like singers that didn't speak Spanish, they learned how to do it in Quechua, in the language of the Incas. They have a special arrangement for that one. The third one was honoring the singer-songwriter from Peru, Chabuca Granda, and I did it during the pandemic when everyone was like people from all continents that actually were back in their countries because of the situation globally. So and then I started doing different. Like I said, it's an educational program. The other part of the program was like the project was like creating workshops, master classes, and going and collaborating with different communities. So I did one with a foundation of children in Colombia, went there to teach to the Philharmonic, to students in Bogota and Cartagena. And this foundation, it was like, like directed to students, to young children that didn't have, coming from different vulnerable communities and all of that. And it was a social change program. So I did that. I did here in Boston for public schools too. I did in Minnesota. Just recently I went and I did a workshop for non-binary and female identifying musicians. And I didn't understand, when you come from Peru or when you come from other places in Latin America, you look at the US and you think like, oh my God, everybody is like New York, or everything is like that, technology and futuristic and all of that. And you don't think that there are places in the US where like education and sometimes it's limited, So that was my experience sometimes in Minnesota. Like the need for these female identifying musicians and non-binary to speak about like how hard it's been for them to find a place sometimes in a music scene that doesn't represent them or like doesn't include them. So yeah, I think being a mentor for other people has happened organically to me, but also intentionally, because I want to be giving what was given to me in somehow, in some way. And yeah, I think it's just it's just great to meet people. I've known musicians from Peru. Like after, I came here and like Paulo was saying, Maestro Stagnaro helped so many students, and I'm so glad to hear about so many other Peruvian musicians and that they're coming here more to Berkeley, and they write me sometimes, or people would write me like, how do you do it? Like, you help. And it's just nice to have those experiences with other people and like know that, like this happened to me and it can happen more. So yeah, it was just great.
I think what I'm hearing from both of you is kind of the same thing that I kind of go through too, is like, you figured it out. And so looking back, it's not as intimidating as when you're going through it. And so now it's like, okay, well, I figured it out. Like, this is how you do it. This is the hack. This is how, and then you have that younger generation before, I guess preceding you, that can really use that information. And they're, to go into the arts, to come to another country, to go into a new culture, it's so brave. Even if you're the most meek kind of like, person, like it's a brave thing. And so I think through empathy, you just want to help them and be like, hey, I was there. I had to figure out how to do a bank account. Right.
Yeah.
I moved. I had to do a bank account when I was 40. It was still intimidating.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
Right.
And representation is just so important. I'm also part of the LGBTQ community, and I think I was in the process of discovering that part of myself when I was during college. And what SOMOS Latinx and the Black initiatives, the Black Scholar initiatives are doing, creating the representation for students to come here and see, like, I see that there is someone I can talk to, like there is someone in the community where I can feel represented, like I was one of the founders of the Latin American Association of Berkeley Students, along with Maestro Stagnaro, that was, our mentor and guide for a student, as a teacher during that moment, and knowing that this program continue, and the more students are feeling represented, that there are more spaces where they can play, perform, showcase their talents, it's just amazing. And I think that really puts a difference in the college, but also for the students, for the experiences that they will have, especially nowadays in this crazy world we are living right now. So yeah.
I think that's a really good point. From both of you, I also am hearing kind of like the theme of creating community and the importance of having a community. And one of my questions was, like, how did you find comfort in an unfamiliar territory? But I understand this might not be, Boston might not be an unfamiliar territory for you, but it's just like, how did you...
He's from Braintree. Let's
There's a minute difference.
Yes, but like, how did you find that community, like coming from different areas or just being here, or if there were times that you felt alone or people just didn't understand you? Like, can you just talk about that importance of finding it on campus?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, it was kind of natural in the sense that when I got here, like I mentioned, I was like very green on the musical side. I grew up, of course, like in a musical household and playing all kinds of instruments for leisure, which is very different than when you sort of take it on as a career or something more serious. And I remember that there were equal parts folks of the very talented students that were here when I first got here to that 5-week program. There were folks that were very open in the way that they shared information or shared their experiences. And there were folks that were very closed off. They were very much gatekeepers. We're talking about, over 20 years ago when there was a very different outlook on what it meant to be a musician, what it meant to pay your dues, what it meant to come from a certain tradition. And I feel like folks nowadays kind of have the advantage that because the industry has shrunk so much from a performance side, they understand that there are many things that they can look into outside of playing an instrument that they could do for a career. Or they could do to supplement their career as a performer. And that at that time when I got here, that wasn't really a thing. It was like you came, you played, and it's like maybe there's still a chance you can make it as a performer, which, lo and behold, was not so much the case. I think I got the tail end moving to New York in 2011, being super involved in the Boston music scene from 2003 and 4 on. I got kind of that tail end of like that thing of like, oh, I can almost still be a player and still, it detrimental, but also it was beautiful because we really benefited from that sort of face-to-face apprenticeship thing that's kind of lost, especially in the sort of Latin and jazz and creative music communities. There were still so many cats that I worked with that some are, have passed now. Many are retired. I got that sort of I like to think, that beautiful sort of changing of the guard between folks that were like performers for a living from the day they got in, and some teachers till the day they died, and the folks that were coming in with me that still had that sort of hope and dream to be a performer, which many of us were able to do so. But the detriment being that we weren't aware that there are other things you can do to supplement that, not only from a financial standpoint, which is super important if you're a performer or, in the industry in any sort of way, shape, or form, but those things were kind of frowned upon in a way. There was a purist mentality, that sort of circulated. So in seeing those folks that I got to meet that were super open with their knowledge and their experiences and where they came from, and seeing the ones that were super closed that then started to open up because they realized it was just kind of resistance is futile, right? Like at a certain point, it's like you have this knowledge and, there's players, again, that if we talk about an old school mentality of like the gatekeeper thing, once you reach to a certain level as a musician, in the craft, once I hear something, there's not really much you can do to prevent me from adapting it, learning it, and doing my own thing with it. And I think that was kind of the rub with that generation, was that many came from a very strict sort of traditional upbringing in their music, that they felt like they were not only the gatekeepers, but sort of the torch holders, and they were very guarded with some of that information. And I know that many of the folks in my generation had that experience. And then there was the polar opposite, folks that were very open, folks like my pops, folks like, that were very much Pedrito Martinez, and just folks that kind of got me really interested in the drum and in the tradition, that came from a very sort of guarded background, but were completely opposite, because they also had the experience of, everybody helps somebody to get where they're going. It's virtually impossible to get ahead as a musician without being helped and without helping folks. That's just the nature of, the industry in part, which is a whole nother thing, right? The business of music, but the nature of playing music and it being a sort of conversational, communicative, and also in parts ego-driven art form, right? Everybody's gotta put in the work and have to have a certain ego in the practice room that they then ideally learn how to relinquish when they get on a stage and can share openly musically, but also in the sort of apprenticeship thing that's a little bit lost in a way, so yeah, I'm not sure how many circles I ran around the question, but I would say that those things kind of all tie into that idea of what I believe to be super important till this day, which is some sort of direct apprenticeship in any field that you go into, but especially musically, because there's so many things that reflect in someone's musicianship that just come from the experiences they live. There's certain things that, like, if you didn't come to Boston at that time, at that, that week, that month, your life would have been, taking a different path. And those things, whether we're conscious of it or not, really form a part of what we can give back.
Listening to you talk about that, I'm thinking about that span of 2003 to 2011 and all the different things that were going on in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
And God, was that a time where you needed that? Because people high up in the music industry didn't know what was going on. It was throwing stuff against the wall. It was like kind of pre-streaming, post-CD.
Yeah, YouTube was right in the middle of it.
Yeah, you had to take your CD and rip the music onto the computer, then hook up your MP3 player, put it onto the, and
LimeWire that shit.
Exactly.
Download the virus, right? Shut down your computer.
But you know what? Like, I think for me, when I moved to Minnesota, which I think is crazier, I think that was the craziest thing I've done, like even more than moving countries, because I had no idea. I was like, where is Minnesota? I was like, what's going on there? So I had no one, and I had to start from scratch, and it was like super different. The culture was super different than the West Coast, the East Coast, and now that I'm in the East Coast, it's also different, and you have to find your community again. So I think to your question about communities is that you have to start sometimes over again, and I think finding people, and it can be harder. When I came to Minnesota, it was pretty much a white boys club, the music scene there, and then I started meeting people, and then when you create the need for representation, people sometimes listen to you if you speak good enough. So I think you speak good enough, not by necessarily, this is my philosophy, not by screaming, but by like telling the truth and speaking genuinely. And that's what I did. I went to the jazz festival, and I remember like staying the whole jazz festival the first year I was in Minnesota, and there was I think there was one woman singer, and that was it. No women, and no one group of people of color, and that was it. And then I was like, okay, this needs to change. This needs to change. And I remember keeping in touch with them. They've been like amazing and better, and like becoming better with like more representation in Minnesota. And then this year I actually performed, and I think it was one of the only like lead performers in the main stage as a woman and as a woman of color. So that was, you know, and doing that workshop and having people that will see me or see other people that this person looks like me, or if that person do it, I can do it too, you know, that's it. So I was like, I think creating the community, but also like the community doesn't have to be only the people that look like you necessarily, but also people that push you, that helps you, that is with you, that supports you. So, and all of that happens with like initiatives, like the SOMOS Latinx, like the Black Scholars initiatives. All of that happened because someone had an idea and said like, we can do it. And then other people that were shy to do it before, they would say like, no, let's get together. And that's how you build community, I think.
That was dope. I really liked how you said you always have to start over with communities. I think that's like just a lesson in life. Even when you get older, like you lose friends, you gain new friends, your new co-workers or whatever, like people are always going to inspire you, whatever aspect of life or positioning that you are in. So it's like just not being afraid and taking that initiative to just branch out, because you never know how that may, you know, amplify your life or bring you to new heights or new levels. So
the most successful people are the people you want to hang out with, you know? You're going to be spending that much time with someone, you want to enjoy your time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. One of the last questions that I wanted to ask is, what is one thing you wish you would have known back then that you would like to share to students today?
Oh, wow.
I guess, I mean, something that you touched upon, which is the importance of, outside of, you know, your craft and all these things that we all focus on in whatever industry that we're in, is the importance of trying to be someone that people want to be around. That's not meant to be something that's like pretentious, like, oh, I want to do things so people like me. I don't really, at the end of the day, I don't really care so much if people like me or if they agree with it's more about, how do I make them feel? Do I make them feel welcome? Do I make them feel like I'm someone I want to be around? Of course, we're going to have different points of view on a million different topics. That's the nature of life. But I think that if you establish yourself as someone that people can talk to, that you're approachable, that you're someone that is sort of easy to manage when you're out traveling for extended periods of time with people, that's something that goes way beyond your ability on your instrument. 9 times out of 10, people are going to want to work with someone that they enjoy being around. Hopefully they're great at what they do, but that's almost secondary. You know, there's a level where not everybody has to be Michael Jordan. Not everybody's got to be LeBron. You know, that's great if you are, and it's wonderful, especially in LeBron's case. Sorry to get sports up in here. People take that for granted that he's a great team leader. That sort of thing is something that maybe MJ, who is near and dear to my heart, didn't, you know, he had the leadership aspect, but he was a kind of an asshole. And I feel like that, it worked out for him, but you're kind of stacking the odds against you if that's the way you approach it. So I would say trying to be somebody that that you want to be around is something that's super important. I think that permeates in every regard and will get you work in every field, in every industry, if you're somebody that people can relate to. And, you know, just be conscious of how you make people feel. That's something that translates directly to the bandstand as well, because that's as a percussionist, in many regards, we are sort of auxiliary or secondary, depending on the genres, of course. If we're talking about you know, pop music or jazz or creative music in the States, it's always going to be a team game. There's never, you know, there's always room to shine. There's light enough for everybody, but it's always this thing that if you sort of carry yourself as someone who's approachable and loving and kind in your personal life, man, that's going to translate in an incredibly beautiful way once you step on stage. And that's what it's about. If I feel good and the people around me feel good, the audience feels good, or the people at a seminar feel good, whoever's around, those things are sometimes it comes naturally to folks, and sometimes it's stuff that we have to work on. But I think if it's something that we're conscious of, it's something that we will never be able to measure the impact of it. And that, I think, is really beautiful and something that will help you as well as other people, you know, just, yeah, basics, I guess.
Something that I would like to tell people, be resourceful mindfully in a way that you don't have to have, like, you cannot do everything. That's impossible. I think people who wants to be into places at the same time, it's going to end up in a bad place. I think it's just knowing what resources you have and use them carefully and you know, wisely. So be resourceful in many ways, but because as a person you can be different things. And the second one will be mental health, and not just because it's for mental health for your care, but also if you are good with yourself, it will allow you to be a social person. Like Paulo was saying, like sometimes I see that more nowadays people are suffering of anxiety or social anxiety and all of that. And unfortunately, in music, you have to be social. You have to be able to put yourself out there and like talk to people, and sometimes that's hard, like the networking thing sometimes can be very overwhelming, but it's important for that. So if you take care of your mental health, you will find, if you're a shy person or if you're an introvert or you are dealing with social anxiety, that will help you, like to find resources and tools in the way that you can be social and taking care of yourself at the same time. So, and when I say resourceful, I see, this is how I see things. In the past, I used to say, like, there are 3 stages, and this happened maybe not necessarily chronologically or, like consequentially. Sometimes it happens many times. But I think the first stage of a musician or someone that decides to pursue a career in music is, the first one is, especially as a performer, is the commitment with your instrument, if you're a vocalist, right? If you're a vocalist. So learning, techniques, spending time with your instrument, really learning, finding your own sound, like really taking care, with your practice time, your routines and all of that. That's all about technicalities with your instrument and your sound. The second stage is being a musician, which is different. You can be an instrumentalist, you can be a vocalist, but not necessarily a musician. When you are to that stage of being a musician, you are very aware of like how to play with people, how to be in a setting where now it's not just about your instrument, it's about like playing an ensemble, like serving your purpose. Are you a bass player? So what is the purpose here? You're not the main instrument. There is a singer, there is someone doing the melody, like how to interact with the percussion, with the drummer, etc. And then the next stage is being an artist, which is different again. You can be an excellent musician and play with many people, but you don't know how to be on a stage. You don't know how to be an artist and put yourself out there and self your artistry, your identity, and finding that voice for yourself as an artist. So people can, connect with you and your music, and you want people to listen to you at the end of the day. And in the past, I used to say that those were the only 3. And I think nowadays, I will because of how the industry is changing and moving fast, and it's faster than before. Before it was different. So I think the 4th stage will be a business person. Like know how to be a good professional. If you are in the business side, or even if you are not, you have to be able to find gigs for yourself, to take care of your finances, paying rent and all of that, making a career, a living out of your career. So that's very important, I think, nowadays, to know like how to do all of that, how to take care of your taxes and all of that, all of those things related to finances and how to sell yourself. So what I will say is that when you are in that path of like learning how to do it, just again, like Berkeley is amazing. Take the time to it's okay to change plans too. Like sometimes we have an idea of like, I'm gonna be this and this and this, and then I know people in LA that are like, oh, what did I study? I studied music engineer, but now I'm like executive producer for Spotify or something like that. So there are many things. Oh, I studied composition, but now I know actually Vago Galindo. He's a producer of Juanes, and he's working with an artist I'm managing, and he I always ask him. He's an amazing producer engineer, and he's always like computers and all of that, and he studied composition at Berkeley. So I thought he was an engineer. So those are cases, like many people change careers or the path in where they started. So that's okay, like just enjoy the ride and then be mindful about all those things and take care of yourself, definitely, so you can be a good musician and a good person, because at the end of the day, someone will hire you. But if you are if you're not good, or you are always late, or you're not someone people want to be around, people are not going to hire you. So you want to be also like someone you will enjoy, like people will enjoy playing with you and sharing music with you. So yeah.
To expand on what Claudia mentioned, I think it's also super important that in the industry, or when you have sort of a calling to be a creative, in whatever capacity that may be, I think sometimes it can be frowned upon if you don't necessarily, let's say, make it from an economic or financial standpoint solely in that industry. And I think that there is nothing further from the truth as far as what you consider to be success. And I'll give you a small example that I'll try to keep super short. So when I moved to New York, I was savvy or privy enough in reality to hit up everybody that I knew when I got to New York a month before. I was like, yo, I'm moving to New York in October, blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks before, hey, I'm moving to New York in 2 weeks. Hey, I'm gonna be in New York in a week. Yeah, I've been here for a day. Hey, I've been here for a month. That sort of outreach helped me, start to get gigs here and there. Obviously, I was fortunate enough to know some folks. And so I was working from the day I got to New York. What I did next was something that most people considered to be kind of wild, which is I would budget what I needed to have to, survive, to make a living in New York. Mind you, I moved to New York with a month of rent and no safety net, because that's how life is. And to me, I realized that for me to get where I wanted to go as an instrumentalist at the time, I needed hours time to hone my craft. So I would take as many gigs as I could to a certain point. When I made X amount of dollars, I would, if the gig either paid an exorbitant amount of money, okay, I'd do it. Or if it was something that I would do for free, gladly, if I felt that it was going to, fulfill my soul, which is something that we don't always get to do when we play music for a living, or B, really help me get exposed to being with people that were another level that I could learn from. Outside of that, I started to sub out every gig that I could because I needed the time to put into the craft, which most people were like, man, you're crazy. What are you doing? I'm like, this is what I need to do for myself. And I think that's something that everybody gets to choose, as Claudia mentioned, how to administer their time. That's part one, right? Part two would be, in my mind, don't feel tied to having to make money solely from the things that you consider to be in line with your industry or your career path, or you know what I mean? As a musician, as a performer, for example, it's like that idea of like, man, if I'm not making money playing, that means I have to make money doing something else. And the mindset should be flipped. It's like, if I can create a plan to have some sort of passive income, I can spend as much time as I want playing my shit, doing what I want to do.
Absolutely.
And I think that sometimes in some circles doesn't feel as valid to folks as being like, oh, I play music, I'm in the 0.00001% if I get to play my instrument all day and I have a retainer and that's all I do. That's amazing if it works out. I don't think that that's what all folks should bank on. So if you're coming into school, or if you're leaving school, or if you're at a place where you're sort of mapping out what it is that you're going to do, don't be afraid to look outside of music, outside of the industry, and try to at least get a grasp on what it could be like for you to create something passive. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to allow you to spend your time however the hell you want. And maybe that's playing an instrument. Maybe that's just hanging with your folks. Maybe that's doing what you want to do. And I feel like that's something that I definitely did not have present when I got here. But by the time I moved to New York and started touring like crazy and was on the road and burnt out and all that, that's when it really flipped gears for me, when I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do the gigs I have to do to make ends meet. I'm going to tour with who I want to tour for now. And I'm going to try to find as much free time as I can to create something that's going to give me some passive income. That was a switch that flipped for me when I was like 27, 28. I was in New York for 3 or 4 years at that point. And I can tell you that the way that I live my life now and administer my time now would not be possible had I not put my music career on the back burner in a way, because I started to be like, all right, I'm just going to do Ricky from now on. I'm going to take these and I got to sort out what it is that's going to push me forward. Because the reality is, I'm not trying to be 60 years old depending on being on the road to make a living. Do I want to be 60 years old and playing and being on the road with whoever the hell I want, whenever the hell I want? Absolutely. But not the dependency aspect of it. And that's something that, especially as a performer, but also in many, in many corporate settings, it's like we're going to be tied to that other person or that other echelon to make sure that we have work. And that's something that, as a musician, man, you really got to break away from that mentality and be okay to do whatever it is that you got to do inside or outside of music to create some sort of passive revenue so that you can spend your time doing what you want. Otherwise, that battle is going to be really nasty once you get up. And I'm still in my mid 30s. We all have different timelines as far as what we want to achieve, what we want to do. But the one thing that will always be constant for every person that has to get up and make a living is time. You're always going to be trying to buy time. That's like something that, you administer as you go. But I think that looking outside of music is not something that should be shunned upon for creating the lifestyle that you want to create. And the last thing I'll say on that is that something that I never thought about when I was, as a teen or in my 20s. Granted, I had a very different experience of music. I was like, getting hit, slapped across the head, being the worst musician on stage, always in the apprenticeship role, which I thought was beautiful. So I didn't really have much time to come up for air. Luckily, seeing my father's career and seeing what he was able to achieve in the golden era of like being able to be on the road and make money making records and all that, which is kind of dissipated now, I would say that if you get a chance to take a second, come up for air, and within all the things that you want to achieve and all the things that you want to do and how you view yourself as a musician and a person and your family and your friends, if you can optimize your sort of career or goal-oriented path for the lifestyle you want to have, say when you're 30, say when you're 40, say when you're 50. What I mean by that is like, what do I want my days to look like? You know, when I have the ideal scenario of like, what do I want my day to look like? Do I want to get up? Where do I want to live? Do I want to be near a beach? Do I want to get up and play my instrument the first thing I do? Do I want to hang with my kids? Do I want to see my like, what is that you could ideally, you know, create for yourself in terms of your lifestyle? I mean, and I don't mean that from a financial standpoint, like what kind of car do I want to drive? No. I mean, what do you want to do with your time? And sometimes if we don't have that, you know, that foresight to be able to be like, all right, it seems crazy to think 5 years, 10 years, 20, 25 years ahead, but just having that on the radar really allows you to sort of, you know, shape the path that you take to hopefully achieve that lifestyle. And for me, that really just comes down to like, how much free time can I have so that I can do whatever I want on a given day, whatever that is. And I think that's something that we don't really look at when we're like just trying to like grind through getting better at our shit and trying to establish ourselves and trying to make a name for ourselves, which is what many of us do in many, you know, sort of in many of our career paths. So yeah, think about what you want your day to look like, and make sure that you are really focused on creating the time to do the things that you want to do in or outside of music. There's nothing wrong with looking outside of music. Some of my favorite musicians took time away from music to build, you know, adjacent careers so that they could come back and just play the gigs they want to play with people they want to play. And that's, at the end of the day, that's how I started. That's how most of us started, just playing music for fun. So let's try to keep that constant.
I agree,
you know, if
with
we can.
You know? I just want to add that for students who want to pursue a career in music, is that before, like you were saying, like making music was enough. Nowadays, it's not. You have to be aware of what's happening right now in the industry and in the world, and things are moving faster. And people don't say music like before. So if you think like coming into studying music is like studying law or studying things where like you finish college, you go to an interview, you get a job, it's not like that. It's a hustle. So if you are for the challenge, then you're gonna be really happy with it. But if you are not, then you have to rethink about like where in music I can be. And that's another thing, like sometimes you think like you play guitar, okay, I play guitar and I want to play guitar and that's what I want to do, and then you face something that is a little even harder than that. Because you play guitar, nobody's going to pay you necessarily. You have to do something else. You have to either choose touring, session musician, teaching, what is it you're going to be doing. So when you have that, maybe you decide like, I do play guitar and I like music, but actually I don't know if I can be, you know, I can just live out of playing guitar. So then you decide like, oh, I can be something else. I can be, you know, in the role, I like live performances. Maybe I'm a stage crew, maybe, you know, different things in the music industry, or I can be a manager, or I can be, you know, in the marketing side or something. I don't know, like all these things, like you have to think about music. Like there is not only one thing that you have to do with this, and it's a hustle. And it's a beautiful hustle once you accepted it and you are ready to put the effort. And just to finish, I would like to recommend a few books. I think reading has become amazing for me recently, and finding different things I'm in very close to the Hollywood scene now, you know, like the industry, and like with protests and like AI coming up and all of that. There are many things that are changing, and I think people need, again, to be resourceful and be able to do different things. And it's okay to have a day job. Sometimes it's okay to do all those things that will lead you to your actual goal. So I would say
it's necessary even more than okay
sometimes.
In some regard, some revenue for
and don't
sure.
be ashamed of that. Sometimes I think that's a hard thing sometimes for people. But yeah, the books I will recommend is 12 Notes of Life and Creativity by Quincy Jones. Really amazing, and to learn about like all the things that he has to go through, and like being an executive in a record label, being a touring, trumpet player, you know, all of those things.
A fellow alum.
Yeah. I want to say alum.
And the other one is Make It Stick. It's actually a psychology book that I read when I was at Berkeley. Really good about like how to find ways of like learning and studying, especially when you're a student and trying to manage, you know, million of things at the same time. And the last one I was doing is How to Quit Your Day Job and Live Out Your Dreams. So by Ken Achiti, I think. And just good. I think it's just a good perspective of like how I can achieve something and have a plan and like kind of like be realistic with it, but also like, no, you can do it, but if you do these things. So yeah, just some recommendations there.
I'll throw a couple in there if it's cool. Aside from the obvious and the stuff that we're all probably aware of, some Malcolm Gladwell stuff and all that stuff that everybody's aware of. Two lesser known books. One actually that's probably super helpful. I'll double check and give you, send a link for the exact name of the book, but it's basically a book on managing money for independent workers. That's something that's like super important because many of us won't have a salary, won't have benefits, blah, blah, blah. I can't think of the name of the book right now, but I think it's called, I want to say like something like Managing Money for Self-Employed Folks, something like that. But I'll look up the that's something super practical and that everybody should at least glance at if they really want to give it a go in the music industry. Another one and it's not something really we touched upon, obviously the breadth of what we can cover here in a short amount of time, which we're extending, is tight. But for those of us that are, and I would assume that everybody that's at least been around music has some sort of what they want to consider maybe a spiritual, emotional connection outside of what's tangible to us and what we can perceive and see. There's a great book by, I'm going to butcher this gentleman's name, but the name of the book is called The Mysticism of Sound and Music. It's an orange cover. It's by, I want to say his name is Hazrat Inayat Khan. It's sort of in line with like some Sufi texts. Not that I read a lot about philosophy and I don't really sort of subscribe to any particular philosophy in terms of in a concrete way or religion or anything like that. But it's a book that kind of teaches us or maybe brings to light some things about the way music connects us to people, to whatever we perceive in a spiritual context. I don't mean religious. Those are two different things sometimes. So they can be the same. They can be one and the same, but they're not always. So I think that's a good read for folks that are kind of, need that extra sort of step to realize whether or not they're really committed to what it feels like to play music and to share our gifts with other people, which is the only way we can play music. I think playing for ourselves is something that's great, do it in the practice room, but when we're in front of it, even one other person, there is something that you're sharing, whether or not you're aware of it. So The Mysticism of Sound and Music, that's a great read recommended to me by Jamie Haddad a long time ago. Yeah.
I'll read it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. The Quincy book is killer, by the way.
Well, that was the episode. Boss, it's really cool to talk and get some like gems, as I like to call it, or just some advice. And I really feel like when we are able to have these conversations with alums, they kind of calm the nervousness of current seniors. Speaking with our graduating seniors who work with us, our students, sometimes we have conversations about how they're a little bit nervous. They're not sure what they're going to get into. So just like having that reassurance, like everything's going to work out, trust in yourself, trust in your work, be a kind person, just the commonalities that we have come across in our conversations with alums, I think is really helpful. Yeah.
And I've said this a few times in the podcast, but, when I graduated from undergrad, I was like, all right, this is it. Wait till they get a load of me. And I realized very quickly that no one was looking for me. I honestly think if I was a little more nervous and a little more kind of on edge, I probably would have wound up better right out of school. Not that I didn't do well. I did pretty good, but it's that nervousness and that emotion. It's good to have those feelings. And then I think that resources like this, where you're getting, insights into decision making and again, like book recommendations. We don't get a lot of book recommendations in the podcast.
Absolutely. Definitely give some sound advice that is going to be helpful for all who listen.
This reminds me, Jaquel, we have 2 more episodes in the season. And if you remember in January, we did make some New Year's resolutions.
We did.
So I'm just going to tease that because we're going to have to be accountable for those at some point later on.
I'm ready. Are you ready?
I might be ready. I'm on PTO next week, so you don't know what I'm going to do.
Come on now. Cheat sheet. It's okay. It's okay.
So playing us out today, we have Antonis Pesas, who is from the class of 1986. And Antonis submitted an alum note. He has a new album coming out, and I really like the title. This is like a title I would come up with. Musing 2, The Introspective Sessions. And today we're going to be listening to Freeing. So you guys all enjoy yourself out there. Hang in there. Graduating students. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.